After decades of conflict, could Lebanon actually contemplate a peace deal with a country that, according to its own documented actions, continues to violate international law, occupy Lebanese territory, build walls inside Lebanon, and conduct what multiple international institutions have characterized as genocidal warfare? Our guest today, Hanin Ghaddar, is one of the most vocal figures engaging with this controversial question. Most recently, she co-authored a policy report titled A Roadmap for Israel-Lebanon Peace. This idea of peace with Israel was considered taboo before. Why do you believe now is the right time to discuss peace?
The resistance died, 1. 2, Lebanon needs peace more than Israel.
How can Lebanon negotiate peace with a country that's systematically violating ceasefires, occupying the territory, targeting civilians, and committing a genocide?
I'm not saying the Israelis are doing everything right. And the Israelis have been making a lot of mistakes that shouldn't have been made, and actually is leading to more tension. They just want to get rid of Hezbollah. They just want security.
Forgive me, we've been hearing about Israel being scared for its security for the last 50, 60, 70 years. But this argument of using it as self-defense and victim and attack, and we want our security, leave us alone, it's been exposed so many times now, especially the last 2 years, as just a ploy to win global, sympathy. But global sympathy is gone for Israel.
But after October 7, huge changes in Israel. You don't understand what the hostages thing did.
What happened on October 7 has been happening to the Palestinians for 50, 70 years. I mean, it's like they got a taste of their own medicine, if I want to put it bluntly. But hang on, guys. You want justice, it's got to be justice for all. You want security, it's got to be security for all. You want peace, it's got to be peace for all. It can't be peace on your terms, security on your terms.
If Israelis was wrong about killing innocent people, you don't do the same.
They tried that. They did a peace walk. And Israeli army snipers were on the borders, on the walls, waiting for the cripples and the disabled people to come up on a peace walk, and they shot them.
When you go and kill so many people, innocent people, and take hostages, you're becoming a criminal.
But Israel's been doing that for 70 years. For decades, Lebanon and Israel have had no diplomatic relations or peace treaty. While an armistice agreement was signed in 1949 to end hostilities following the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, Lebanon has never recognized Israel or established formal peace. Israel suspended the armistice in 1967, and the two countries remain in a technical state of non-belligerency without normalization. The mere idea of a peace deal or direct talks with Israel was long considered off limits in Lebanon, a political taboo rarely discussed openly. Yet today, for the first time in decades, talk of peace is emerging in Lebanese discourse, sparking a serious national conversation about a topic once only mentioned in whispers. Recent developments have cracked open this door. With the country reeling from wars and crises, some Lebanese leaders now argue that the language of negotiation is more important than the language of war, as Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said recently in a statement. And this ignited some intense debate. Even prominent anti-Hezbollah figures like Sami Ismail, leader of the Kataib party, have gone so far as to call direct negotiations with Israel necessary, declaring that what was impossible has become possible. Yet this debate emerges at a moment when Israel's actions on the ground tell a very different story. Despite a ceasefire agreement signed almost exactly a year ago on the 27th of November 2024 with Lebanon, Israel has continued systematic violations. UN peacekeepers have documented over 500 airstrikes in Lebanon since the ceasefire began, killing at least 270 civilians, including 107 non-combatants. Israel has refused to withdraw from 5 strategic positions inside Lebanese territory, missed the January 26 and February 18 withdrawal deadlines, and is now constructing concrete walls deep inside Lebanon, more than 4,000 square meters beyond the UN demarcated blue line. UN experts warn Israel's repeated strikes and partial occupation have made schools, health centres and places of worship inaccessible, preventing Lebanese from resuming normal life. Israel has shot at returning civilians, killing them, demolished villages and desecrated memorials, including graffiti reading, "The only good Shia is a dead Shia," spray painted at a 1948 massacre site. Meanwhile, in Gaza, what numerous UN bodies, human rights organisations and genocide scholars now term a genocide continues unabated. As of November, just this month, over 69,000 Palestinians have been killed, at least 20,000 of them children. Despite a so-called ceasefire, Israel killed an additional 280 Palestinians since the ceasefire came into effect, and continues to block humanitarian aid, creating what the UN calls a catastrophic hunger crisis. The International Court of Justice has ordered provisional measures to prevent genocide. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant for war crimes and crimes against humanity. These unprecedented signals underscore both the sensitivity and the urgency of the question. After decades of conflict, could Lebanon actually contemplate a peace deal with a country that, according to its own documented actions, continues to violate international law, occupy Lebanese territory, build walls inside Lebanon, and conduct what multiple international institutions have characterized as genocidal warfare? Our guest today, Hanin Ghaddar, is one of the most vocal figures engaging with this controversial question. Ghaddar is the Friedmann Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, where she focuses on Shia politics in the Levant region. A longtime journalist, she was the managing editor of Lebanon's Now news website in Beirut, shedding light on Hezbollah's evolving role in Lebanon's fractured political system. Over her career, Ghaddar has written extensively about Lebanese politics, Hezbollah's influence, and Iran's regional role, contributing analysis to major outlets like the New York Times and Foreign Policy. Most recently, she co-authored a policy report titled A Roadmap for Israel-Lebanon Peace, published by the Washington Institute just a month ago in October. In this report, she and her co-authors outline possible steps toward a future peace agreement between the two countries, a bold endeavour, considering that formal peace was until very recently a forbidden subject in Lebanon. Ghaddar has argued that incremental diplomatic moves could be pursued, especially after the heavy toll that conflict has exacted on Lebanon. She has also been outspoken about the need to address Hezbollah's military status in any peace scenario. In fact, one of her recent commentaries is bluntly titled, "Without a Hezbollah disarmament deadline, Lebanon should face repercussions," reflecting her view that the international community should press Lebanon's leaders to rein in Hezbollah's weapons, even through tough measures, to prevent another devastating war. Ghaddar's positions are not without controversy. As a Shia Lebanese who openly criticizes Hezbollah and calls for a new approach to Israel, she has earned both praise and fierce criticism. Supporters see her as a courageous voice willing to challenge outdated orthodoxies and prioritize Lebanon's long-term stability. Detractors, however, accuse her of promoting policies that view as aligned with Israel or Western agendas at the expense of Lebanon's sovereignty. The idea of conditioning aid or applying pressure on Lebanon to force Hezbollah's disarmament, for example, strikes many in Beirut as extreme. Nonetheless, Ghaddar insists that without breaking the cycle of resistance, rhetoric and perpetual conflict, Lebanon will remain hostage to war and crisis. In this special episode of Real Talk, we'll delve into the thorny issue of Lebanon-Israel negotiations and peace prospects. We'll also ask Hanin Ghaddar to share insights from her research and experience, and will also pose tough questions to critically examine her views in light of Israel's documented actions on the ground. Hanin, sorry for that long introduction, but very important to give everyone context, and welcome to Real Talk. And thank you for joining us from Maryland, I believe you said you were in at the
moment. I'm in Maryland. My office is in Washington, but today I'm in Maryland. And thank you very much for this great introduction. I agree with everything you said. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very, very much. I'll jump into the questions because I know you're strapped for time. You've got to go straight into other conversations and discussions. So let's start with the roadmap. Your report, A Roadmap for Israel-Lebanon Peace, lays out a possible path to a peace deal. Can you start by summarizing the key elements of this roadmap for us?
I think there are two main goals. One, to actually pave the way for peace without jeopardizing the disarmament efforts. It's not this or that, right? They can go together. And the negotiations, the roadmap for peace, I think it has to start now in order to pave the way for actual peace, or whatever you want to call it. But this has to start now in order to for Lebanon and Israel to be ready for that phase once the issue at hand is resolved. Right. Another goal, despite all the criticism I get about, implementing Israeli agenda in Lebanon and, threatening Lebanon's sovereignty, is actually the opposite. My goal is to protect Lebanon from another war. And I think that's the only way. My goal is to make sure that Lebanon becomes sovereign, not to take away from the sovereignty. My problem with Lebanon today is that it's not acting sovereign. It has to be sovereign, and it's not acting sovereign. The moment Lebanon becomes sovereign, I would be very happy. It's changing, but it's very slow. And that I heard actually from mostly Shia in Lebanon, more than anyone else, that they do not feel that the army has shari'iyya, legitimacy. It's like there's no wahra. They use the word wahra, which is legitimacy and authority. There's no authority. The Shia today look at the Hezbollah and the army. And I'm talking about the Hezbollah community. There's the Shia community and there's the Hezbollah community. And there's a huge difference. And there are different communities in the middle. So they look at the army and they look at Hezbollah. They see the army anyway coordinating with Hezbollah. And Hezbollah is still more powerful in terms of what they want to surrender to the army and what they want to keep. They do not feel the authority of the army, which means that they do not feel the sovereignty of the state. And what happened yesterday, actually, in Beit, when the people actually called the army to come in because they don't want the Israelis to bomb that building that they called for evacuation, it's a big sign of this desire for the state to act more sovereignly. And I think this is the key issue.
And desperation.
Desperation. The people want the state to be sovereign. The problem that is not. And the pressure that I call for is basically to push the state to act more sovereign. I don't want the international community to intervene in the state's affairs. I just want the state to act sovereignly. The disarmament issue, we cannot really play with this because the repercussion, I'm trying to avert another war. Because
another war with Israel? You mean?
Yes, another attack by Israel. I'm not calling it a war. It's another attack by Israel of Hezbollah.
They're attacking every day.
No, this is not what I'm talking about. It hasn't started yet, but I see it happening. The new phase of the escalation is happening, which is going into evacuating people from buildings, asking, because the IDF through the mechanism told the Lebanese army to evacuate certain private properties, right? We heard a lot about the private properties. They did not. The army actually said no. So now I think that the Israelis, what happened in the past 2 days is that the Israelis decided to go for the next phase, which is targeting private property. This is dangerous because it means that eventually the private properties within densely populated areas are going to be hit. This is the new phase. The densely populated areas where Hezbollah is hiding their weapons. And we know that Hezbollah tend to hide their weapons under densely populated areas because this is where Israel is trying to, have been avoiding in this phase that started with the ceasefire agreement until today. Now it's a new phase. And I think that's what happened in Beit is the reaction of the people, that they want the state. They want the army to be there. They don't want the war anymore. The goal of this study is to actually say, let's pave the way to there, because from my understanding and from my, interviewing people in Lebanon, including Shia community, the resistance narrative is that Hezbollah lost the war. Hezbollah failed at compensating and reconstruction. That people realize that this cycle of wars and violence is no longer valid. They're fed up. So the study wants to pave the way for the peace. That is the only way forward. To the Lebanese, Israelis are not that interested in peace, actually, the way Lebanese are interested in peace. And I have to say that when we call for peace, we don't get very, very clear responses from the Israelis. When Joseph Aoun calls for negotiations, he didn't get any response from the Israelis, because the Israelis, their goal is security, not peace. We need peace more than the Israelis. They don't need peace. They just want to get rid of Hezbollah. We need peace for prosperity. We're trying to convince them that they need peace for security. Peace is the only way for Lebanon to move forward. So the details of this is, number one, to start the negotiations. The Israelis have to respond to these negotiations positively, without conditions. Because if we put conditions, no one's going to respond. Without conditions, let's talk. Then we can talk about things that can be done without, a lot of effort. One of the main things that we can talk about is the very old, archaic anti-normalization law, which is stupid because every Lebanese outside, look at Dubai, the Abraham Accords country. How many Lebanese live in Dubai? How many Lebanese work with Israelis in the same companies? Can you really address that? That's stupid. That's horrible. So this is one of the laws that the Lebanese can abolish without any pact with anyone, without the international community. We can easily abolish this law and show goodwill. Once you start acting sovereign and showing goodwill, then the international community will look at Lebanon as something they can work with. The repercussions of not doing that, the army, for example, cannot stop at south of Litani. Beit is in south of Litani. So they cannot stop at south of Litani. They need to finish by the end of the month. What are they doing? They need to act more sovereign. We cannot wait for the disarmament to finish, because once disarmament finishes, we need to be ready with a plan to go there. Either border demarcations is key to this. Lebanon has zero border demarcations. We don't have a border demarcs with Syria, and this is what actually led to so many problems with the Syrian regime and with the current regime. God knows how this is going to develop. And we need a border demarcation with the Israelis, which requires actually the Syrians to say that Shebaa is Syrian, not Lebanon to acknowledge that. There are certain things that can be done without disrupting any of the ongoing, efforts to disarmament or sovereignty or government building, etc. It is essential to do this. One, to avoid another war, to show goodwill, and two, to actually get somewhere where this is not just another phase of the war.
There's so much that you just mentioned there. Just on the Beit situation, if the people are saying, come and see for yourself to the army, isn't that proof that there's no weapons in the building and that Israel is just claiming, what it usually does in order for it to continue its destruction?
I don't believe so. I think so far we've seen everything that has been bombed by the Israelis prove that there have been weapons. From all the sparks that were coming out, the secondary explosions that were happening. Military experts looked at it very closely. There have been second explosions and sparks, and they found actually bombs everywhere. I haven't seen any explosion that happened since the ceasefire without that kind of proof that there have been weapons hidden in these areas. Beit Leaf, the story is not over. We have to see. The story is not over because the army arrived last night. They're supposed to go and check. If they go check and find weapons, they will tell the mechanism. They will not tell us.
You're talking about the ceasefire mechanism.
That mechanism is basically has been established after the ceasefire agreement that includes, it's headed by the Americans, but also includes French and others. So the mechanism's job is to actually coordinate these things. It's not, its job is not to do anything on the ground. It's just to coordinate between the Lebanese armed forces and the Israelis, in the sense that they have to make sure that the Lebanese army actually confiscated the weapons, and then they will tell the Israelis it's done so they don't bomb. Sometimes it works that way, sometimes it doesn't.
What about the attacks on civilians, like the Bazzi family that was killed in the massacre at Hanin Ghaddar?
Yeah, that was bad. That was bad.
And there's
I'm
been
not saying the Israelis are doing everything right. And the Israelis have been making a lot of mistakes that shouldn't have been made, and actually is leading to more tension. We know, like, the Israelis, at the end of the day, they have their own issues. And I think things will change after the elections, because now we have a problem within with the Israeli leadership that is pushing for all sorts of horrible, discriminative, every Shia is what the thing you said, like very discriminative statements.
Yeah.
The far right, who are horrible. But after the elections, I truly believe that this is going to change. Whether Bibi wins or not, the coalitions are going to change. So this will reflect differently on the ground.
But that's not until October next year.
We'll see, but that's why we cannot wait.
It's a long way off, and a lot of destruction and death can happen, and it's still happening until then.
Again, I'm not saying the Israelis are doing everything right. Are they avoiding civilians? Not as much as they should, but way less than it was before. But they're trying to avoid it more and more. However, what I'm trying to say here, that we're entering a new phase where civilians will die. This is where we're going.
More civilians will die.
So far, this first phase, the first year, the Israelis have deliberately tried to avoid densely populated areas. So they haven't hit Dahi, they haven't hit like downtowns and cities, etc. They have been really trying to avoid heavily populated areas. Civilians have died, but a lot more will die if we go into the next phase. And the next phase really depends on how the army will behave, the Lebanese army will behave.
What would it take, and how long before Israel would want to escalate to that next phase? Because everyone's asking me here, I go everywhere.
Probably
they ask
after
me, do you think a new war's coming?
Probably after the Pope's visit.
Right.
Probably, because they don't want to disrupt that.
Even Christmas, even though it's leading into Christmas.
Either after the Pope's visit immediately or after the holidays, because we also know that the Americans are giving Lebanon 2 months, right? 2 months, which means until the holidays. So we might see a coordination on that, or like, let these 2 months finish, and then it's a different phase. So probably by January 1st, definitely not before the Pope's visit, but most probably after the holidays, because the Americans already said 2 months.
There's so much I could, go back and forth, but I think it'll come out during the conversation. But let's jump into the next question about the, breaking the taboo. This idea of peace with Israel, as we said, was considered taboo before. Why do you believe now is the right time to discuss peace? What specific factors have made this dramatic shift possible? Is it because Lebanon's, in economic freefall, war exhaustion, international pressure, and critically, does it reflect a real change in Lebanese public sentiment, or is it primarily and a kind of an elite conversation driven by Western institutions and economically desperate leadership? Like, where's this coming from, and why is it happening right now? Why do you think it's allowed to be discussed right now?
So the first thing is that peace is becoming part of the public discourse in Lebanon for a very, very first time. And this is an opportunity. Second, I believe that there's a lot of miscommunication between Lebanon and Israel, because there isn't a real interlocutor. The mechanism focuses on the disarmament, but the rest of the stuff, there's no real communication. One, because they cannot communicate, but also because there's no serious interlocutor. The main interlocutor today, which is Morgan Ortega's, is not focused on everything. It's focused mainly on the mechanism and disarmament. Hopefully, Michel Issa, who just arrived in Lebanon last Friday, would be able to be that kind of interlocutor, but he can only be an interlocutor with the Americans, who will talk to as an ambassador, I don't think his job is to talk to the Israelis. So we need a serious interlocutor. Tom Barak was not a good interlocutor. He would come up with something that would, without coordinating with the Israelis, and then the Israelis say no, and it looks like they have refused his proposal, but he should coordinate with them, and he doesn't. So recently, anyway, he's been taken off the Lebanon file, and he's no longer dealing with that. Michel Isa is the guy head. We have to resolve this miscommunication. We have to resolve the miscommunication for two reasons. One is the Lebanese need to explain their position, show that they are serious, because the Israelis do not think that the Lebanese are serious. We don't know if they are serious, because sometimes they are, sometimes they are not. So we need to understand if they are serious or not. We need the communication to start, but mostly to avoid a war. It's about how to finish this phase of disarmament and move towards border demarcation.
Why are we able to talk about this? The question is, why are we now able to talk about a potential or possible or future? Yes. What's happened on the ground? What's shifted politically, diplomatically?
The resistance died, one. Two, Lebanon needs peace more than Israel. What Israel will get from this is security, but Lebanon can only prosper when there is an established peace and disarmament, because then you can convince the international community to invest in Lebanon, to bring in all the investments that Lebanon desperately needs. We cannot keep taking loans from the IMF and the World Bank and the international community. It's like this is more debt. We cannot keep doing that. We need to make money, not to borrow money. And the only way the investors, we do a lot of briefings with investors, private sector, etc., here in Washington, and they all ask the same question. When will it be safe to invest in Lebanon? They're interested. When will it be safe to invest in Lebanon? And their main question is, will Lebanon and Israel will have peace again? This is crucial for Lebanon. Peace is more beneficial for Lebanon than it is for Israel, despite all the, views on the ground. Lebanon will benefit mostly from peace.
What we're seeing right now, and what I hear, because I'm on the ground a lot, talking to a lot of people, is how can Lebanon negotiate peace with a country that's systematically violating ceasefires, occupying the territory, targeting civilians, and committing a genocide? It's incomprehensible, because it's like this raging bull at the moment that is not listening to anything. When you look at everything that it's doing to Gaza, with every agreement that's been made with the Palestinians, how does it make logical sense to even contemplate it? And you're saying also, we've got to reach out to them, we've got to communicate with them, we've got to engage them.
Absolutely.
And they're not interested. I'm sure they don't give a damn, because they're happy, because they've got control of everything, and they're doing whatever they want to do.
Yes, that's the problem.
The Lebanon, it comes in, it feels like you're coming in from a place of weakness, not strength, and they're going to take it or leave it, and they don't care. And
What strength? What strength? There's nothing left.
We've got to get leverage. We've got to get leverage.
No, we don't have anything left. Even, resistance is dead. Hezbollah lost. I never wanted Hezbollah to be in charge of the resistance, but, a lot of people were okay with it, but it failed. Lebanon has no leverage whatsoever. We need this more than anyone else. What do you have to, what do you have? What tools do you have to challenge Israel? We have zero tools to challenge Israel. And that's the only way to stop this aggression. I'm not saying go to Israel and say tomorrow we will sign peace. This is going to take time. If you go tomorrow to tell Israel and let's sit on the table and sign peace, that would be completely idiotic. You have to sit with the Israelis to discuss what's going on and what is the best way to move on. And I'm telling you, the Israelis will only accept these negotiations if they see something from Lebanon, some kind of goodwill beyond words. So far, all they're hearing is words, and they believe that this is only a way to buy time, to stall, which could be true, to show that we are serious about really resolving these issues between Lebanon and Israel, like the 5 points, the attacks, the aggression, the disarmament, we need to show some goodwill by either implementing one of the steps that we talked about in the paper, or by starting actually to move north of Lithuania and start doing something through the Lebanese army. If we don't do anything, and we just talk about negotiations, the Israelis will have doubts. My opinion is that the Israelis should say, yes, let's talk, and they have nothing to lose. But we need this more than they need it. We do not have the tools to challenge Israel. We are weak, and if we don't do anything, the only other alternative, unfortunately, is war. Do we really want another war? Can we get more people killed? I don't want that.
The reality is that the cabinet met with the army, called on the army to present a plan, which they did reveal to the cabinet. And according to an interview I did with the Deputy Prime Minister, Tariq Mithri, the cabinet received the plan very well. It's not publicly, it hasn't been made public, but that the army has got phases, and this includes obviously the core of the plan is how do we disarm Hezbollah, that the state must have authority over all weapons and the military might of the country.
Great, that's wonderful.
And they are implementing it. And even the army, because of Israel's actions and its continued violations, even my sense, he didn't say this, but reading between the lines, it's like even the army is doing it in phases because it is being cautious, because if they go in hard against Hezbollah and fully disarm Hezbollah and destroy Hezbollah's weapons, another point that, doesn't make any sense to me other than to keep the Lebanese army weak, is that they don't want to, that they're worried, the army's worried that they're not sure what Israel's going to do, and look at what it's doing, because they've got a prime example of what its actions are on the ground in the West Bank and Gaza. Obviously Gaza the worst, but look at what it's doing to the West Bank. So there's this phased approach to what the army plan is going to undertake. One point raised by a member of parliament from Hezbollah that I interviewed, Ibrahim Moussaoui, was, why don't they allow us to give all our weapons to the army so we can strengthen the army and allow the army to, we would feel like the army then has some capability, because the Americans aren't weaponizing the army, they're not even giving them defense weapons. Really, really logical, and you can't argue with the question of why isn't America, if it's supporting the Lebanese army, allowing the Lebanese army to at least have weapons of defense. These are all the things that are being discussed and considered, and it really puts people makes them nervous as to what any peace deal, negotiation, or anything to do with Israel. Look at it. It's occupying Lebanese territory. It's killing civilians. It's preventing people. It's detonating villages. It's burning olive groves. It's like there's no stopping what it will do, what it comes up next. It's like they're just high on drugs, and whatever they think of, they're going to do.
They're high on power. That's true. Yeah. They're high on victory. They're high on power. They feel that they have the escalation dominance, and it's true. They have the escalation dominance. They have the power. They are way more advanced than the Lebanese army or Hezbollah, and they feel that they can do whatever they want. Except that, of course, like the Americans holding them back on some issues, but not on everything. That's exactly why we need to start negotiations, because of this situation. Really, I believe that. If you don't start talking to them and get them at the table in front of you, direct negotiations, and not army to army, politics to politics, and discuss all these things and resolve the miscommunications and show what Lebanon can do and what Lebanon needs in order to do these things. And then there are another question. This is something that you need to talk to them about. We cannot ignore this anymore, because otherwise, the only other way to move forward is for them to continue this and escalate and kill more people. We want to try to avoid that. and the only leverage, the only power that Lebanon has at this point is conversation, is discourse. This is the only way. Another thing, they do not trust the army. I'm telling you, the recent, since the ceasefire until now, the army, yes, gave a plan. There's no trust in the army because two things. I have to be very clear about it. It's not just the Israelis, it's also the Americans. One is that the history of when they look at the plan, they don't see a timeline. They see a timeline for south of Litani, but they don't see a timeline after that. That's okay, you're going to go to north of Litani. How long are you going to take? No one says anything. How long are you going to take in order, is it a year? Is it 2 years? It's 5 years? Another thing is the army has a lot of Hezbollah people. It's infiltrated by Hezbollah, and we know that. And we know who coordinates with Wafi Safa, who doesn't coordinate with Wafi Safa, who does what Hezbollah wants, who doesn't. So they don't trust the army. They feel if they give the weapons, if they allow, even the Americans, actually, this is the Americans more than anyone else, if they allow the army to confiscate Hezbollah's weapons and keep them, then they will eventually be returned to Hezbollah. They want them destroyed, because they do not trust that the army will not give it back to Hezbollah. It happened before. Not through the disarmament phase, it's before. So they don't trust the army. There are so many issues that need to be resolved. The disarmament plan, the time frame, the army, who is in charge within the army of doing this and that, because they don't trust everyone on the ground. This cannot be resolved without actual face-to-face conversation.
But it should be face-to-face internally first, not with the enemy. Shouldn't it be resolved? I mean, the things that you're discussing.
Internally, like with who? With Hezbollah?
Yeah, like with the army, the government,
I am against the Hezbollah is not a Lebanese party, it's the Iranians. We have to know that their allegiance is the IRGC. They've said it many times, and we should believe them. They are not another Lebanese party. They're not.
That's not what they're saying to me, and that's not what the conversation is, and that's not what the conversation is on the ground.
They're not going to tell you that.
But I did, confront them about their loyalty to Iran and the allegiance.
They're not going to tell you that. Of course, they're not going to tell you that. They're going to always say we're a Lebanese party, especially when they're on the low.
But what's the point? What's the point now? Iran can't give them any weapons. Iran stopped giving them money.
They've already sent them a lot of money and weapons from Iraq, from Africa, from Venezuela.
But how do they get in? How do they get in? The borders are Syria's blocked now because,
they are now manufactured. They are now manufactured internally. And the army is allowing that. Everything today is manufactured internally. They get the equipments. Most of these are drones, and you need very simple equipments that can be used for anything, so they do not get a red flag at the customs, and they own the customs anyway. So they are smuggling in equipment, and everything now is being manufactured internally. And the money, a lot of it is coming through quote unquote tourists. $10,000 here, $10,000 there. Lebanese going to Iraq, bringing some money with them. Doesn't raise a flag. So they've been getting a lot of money, and the Iranians are sending them money. The Iranians are coordinating the whole thing. Even if the money is not coming from the Iranian banks itself, or the IRGC bank itself, it's coming from their businesses in Iraq, which is funding their operations along the region. So this is where everything is happening. Venezuela, Iraq, Africa, and the IRGC is coordinating the money. So they're still getting everything they need from Iran, full stop.
How do we know that? Is there evidence? Has been?
Oh, yeah, it's all outsourced. Of course. It's I can send you a few links. It's out there. And actually, I have sources on the ground within these entourage. They say it. They admit it. It's not something they're ashamed of. Of course,
just on the drones and the equipment here, if they're doing it here, why can't Israel see? I mean, it's got its drones and monitoring.
That's why they're raising last time, remember recently they're talking about private property, and they also warning about Hezbollah rebuilding its weapons. So they say that, and they have the information, and they know that it's happening in densely populated areas. which they haven't started bombing yet. They're asking the army to do something about it. They're asking the Lebanese government to do something about it, and all they hear is silence. So that's something need to be addressed, because unfortunately, if we don't do any of this, we're definitely heading for another war.
And just
Some
talking
escalation.
just talking about the Hezbollah, because you mentioned that you're in contact with a lot of people who are Shia and also Hezbollah. How would they react if Lebanon started negotiating, the state of Lebanon started negotiating peace treaty with Israel? How do you think that would translate on the ground for Lebanon, for Hezbollah, for the people? So is there a realistic scenario where Hezbollah would accept such an agreement?
No, of course not. It doesn't matter. My opinion is, when you start these negotiations, you're totally weakening the resistance narrative. You're weakening Hezbollah. You're leading Hezbollah to accept certain conditions, which they've done before. They accepted the ceasefire agreement. They totally accepted the ceasefire agreement with all its conditions and with all the Israeli superiority in it. They accepted the maritime border agreement. They accepted many things before, although we thought that they're going to be against it because it's like an agreement with Israel. They accepted. When they feel that they are cornered, they will accept. And two, they don't start with a peace negotiations. You start with negotiations to resolve certain issues that are pending between Lebanon and Israel, including disarmament. And then you move forward. Once you do this, you will have leverage. Internally, the government will have leverage. And internally, the government will be able to say, we're doing something and we're moving on with it. Hezbollah will send their motorcycles in the street. Wafi Safa will gather their gangs. There will be threats by Naim Assem. But what's new?
One of the things that I've been, talking to people about, especially non-Lebanese, non-Shia even, with what's happening on the ground, with the continuation and all of the reports that we're seeing from the south and the attacks and the killings, more people, and I was surprised by it, but in the last few months, significantly more people are worried about Hezbollah handing over their weapons to the army, and what will happen to Lebanon, what will happen to the Lebanese if Israel, if they do hand over. There's a lot of fear here. I'm surprised by it, but I'm talking to lots of different type Christians, Muslims, you name it, Shia, Sunni, Druze, and they're like, there's a silent, they're not, promoting it and putting it out there.
Hezbollah hands in their weapons, two things will happen. And I know that for a fact. What Americans will do is that they will even strengthen the Lebanese army more. So the Lebanese army will be in charge of security. Today, Hezbollah is in charge of security. Then the Lebanese army will be in charge of security. The state will be sovereign. And then the international community, not just Americans, the whole international community, including the Arabs, will do whatever it takes in order to strengthen the Lebanese army. And this will work. This will erase these fears. Two, Israel is not interested in Lebanon beyond Hezbollah. This whole thing about Israeli ambitions in Lebanon, and they want this, that they don't want to deal with Lebanon. It's such a mess for them. It's a headache. They just want security.
But the settlers are selling plots in South Lebanon. They're advertising, and there was a march to South Lebanon by a group of settlers
will be resolved.
To reclaim southern Lebanon.
This is the far right attempt to disrupt things. This is internal politics.
This is what they're doing in the West Bank. I mean, it's shocking.
I'm telling you what I know for a fact from conversations I had with the Americans. It's very clear. This is the far right attempt at disrupting things and pushing for more disruption. However, once you start negotiating with the serious people in charge, this is all going to be resolved. That's why you need to start talking about these things. The Israelis will have their security conditions. Lebanon will present its concerns, and it's a give and take thing. And if it's not a give and take thing, then Lebanon can leave the table. But it has to be give and take.
Forgive me. Let me just bring this, comparison into the conversation, because we've been hearing about Israel being scared for its security for the last 50, 60, 70 years. And, I've been to Israel. I covered the peace treaty with Jordan. I met lots of Israelis, and at a time when there really was a a push for peace in the mid-90s. But this argument of using it as self-defense and victim and attack, and we want our security, leave us alone, and people saying this, it's been exposed so many times now, especially the last 2 years, as just a ploy to win global, sympathy. But global sympathy is gone for Israel. And so when you're saying this to me, I find it really hard to accept that they just want security. They just want leave us alone.
That's exactly what they want from Lebanon. The West Bank is a different story. Gaza is a different story. Lebanon, I'm 100% sure that all they want from Lebanon is security. They don't want
Syria as well, and they've gone into the Golan Heights, and they're
all about security. It's all about security. Golan Heights is a different story. The Syrians accepted to give up the Golan Heights, the old regime and the new regime, in return for certain, sanctions release. This is the Syrian government decision, right? If Lebanon says no, we will not give up any land and leave the table, they can do that. They don't have to accept it, and we go back to square one and we accept, a continuous state of war. But I
we're
know
talking about giving up Shebaa farms and those,
not giving up Shebaa farms. Shebaa farms, it's Syrian. The Syrian government will deal with the Israelis. All they have to do is acknowledge it as Syrian, and it will be our way, and we will resolve the whole border demarcation thing. Then it's not an issue, a Lebanese issue, it's a Syrian issue. That's something else. Shebaa is not Lebanese. That's clear. Lebanon has to acknowledge it. The Syrians have to acknowledge it. Jumblat himself said that. So it's Jumblat doesn't say things. He's not someone who say things abruptly. He actually said, and everybody knows that Syria is a Shebaa. The documents are there. They just have to be, brought up and agreed on. Border demarcations, etc. When you do all these things, resolve Shebaa, do border demarcations. The border demarcations will resolve all these issues. Once you do border demarcation, the Israelis cannot go in and take land. It's like you go back, but it has to come with a lot of reassurances. All I'm saying is that you cannot resolve any of this. You cannot tell Israel that they have to stop doing these things unless you sit on the table and present your own concerns and conditions and resolve this. If they refuse, you leave the table. What's there to lose? What's there to lose? You say it failed. However, I tell you something very, very clear. You're bringing up incidents about 30 years ago. Some of them may be true, some of them maybe not. But after October 7, huge changes in Israel. You don't understand what the hostages thing did.
Tell us.
It's the biggest trauma that the Israeli society, not just the government, we're talking about society. It's the biggest trauma to the Israeli society. Bigger than any trauma that they had before with war in Egypt, 7, etc. This is the biggest trauma because what happened is that innocent people were taken as hostages and most of them died. This is the most traumatic experience. The people who were killed, the innocent people who were killed at the music festivals, this has hit them at the core. And for them today, until today, they are in such a defensive mode that they don't want to talk about, peace with their neighbors, especially the Palestinians and the Lebanese, because unless they get guarantees that this is not going to happen again, they're going to continue this and the society will support it. You have to give them guarantees that this will not happen from Lebanon, that Hezbollah is not going to do another October 7 from Lebanon. They don't believe that.
I'm not an insensitive person. At all, and I mourn the loss of any life, innocent or whatever, and the tragedies of war and conflict are terrible. But I mean, what happened on October 7 has been happening to the Palestinians for 50, 70 years, and how can the Israelis, I mean, it's like they got a taste of their own medicine, if I want to put it bluntly, and it should have made them think, shit, we've been doing this to them. And there are maybe 10% of the population who said, oh my God, and I've watched interviews with people who said we've been traumatizing the Palestinians and we have to end this, but I can't feel any compassion. I mean, I'm very sad that people died, but hang on, guys, you want security, we all know what the line is. You want security, you want justice. It's got to be justice for all. You want security, it's got to be security for all. You want peace, it's got to be peace for all. It can't be peace on your terms, security on your terms, whatever on your terms. That's the biggest argument we're having around the world at the moment.
Daizy, you're mixing things together. No, I'm sorry. When you want to, respond to military attack on your civilians, you respond to the military. You don't respond as a military, as Hamas. You respond to the military. When you go and kill so many people, innocent people, and take hostages, you're becoming a criminal. I have more than compassion.
But Israel's been doing that for 70 years. That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying, when you equate it to what Israel's been doing, destroying buildings, going and killing civilians.
No, this is a different story. You're not listening to me. But once you go after civilians, you lose this argument that you're using.
Israel's been going after civilians. They've been shooting. They use little kids as
Can I respond? Can I respond? That's what you're saying actually could have been valid if they didn't do October 7. October 7 erased all the validity of the Palestinian victimhood because they became criminals. They killed innocent people. If Israelis was wrong about killing innocent people, you don't do the same. You prove
you don't do the same.
You prove that you are better. You don't become the monster.
They tried that.
Monsters.
They tried that. They did a peace walk. And Israeli army snipers were on the borders, on the walls, waiting for the cripples and the disabled people to come up on a peace walk, and they shot them.
I am not arguing against that. I'm saying that once you become a monster, you lose all the arguments. You lose everything.
Well,
they
have
proved that they are worse, much worse than any other group in the region. They became serious monsters. They lost it. I don't know what happened, but what they did is not forgivable and it's not justifiable. I'm sorry, it's not justifiable. You want to have a decent fight. You want to have this argument about, Israel is doing this and this. You don't become a monster. They become monsters. This is criminal. And that's my opinion. I'm sorry.
No. I mean, we want to hear from you. This is why we're having this conversation. It was always going to be a heated debate.
No. I totally supported the hostages, the release of the hostages. And every time I hear someone saying, stop the war, free Palestine, my response is that, okay, but also please add to it, release the hostages. No one asked Hamas to release the hostages. All these people in the streets were asking Israel to stop the war, but none of these people addressed Hamas and asked them to release the hostages, knowing that this would have stopped the war. Maybe this would have contributed.
They handed over the hostages and they're still killing them. They're still killing. They've killed.
What I'm saying is that I've never heard from any one of those people in the protests asking Israel to stop the war address Hamas saying that they have to release the hostages. And that's how Hamas and Gaza and all these people who contributed to October 7 actually lost the narrative because they became monsters and they were protected. And
I don't know. I've got to say, I've watched a lot of protests and speakers, and so many people spoke about the innocent civilians. A lot of people, there was a lot of humanity. So
did they ask Hamas to release the hostages? That's my point.
I think what they asked for, I do remember what they asked for is that for the Israeli hostage and the Palestinian hostages to be released. They asked for both hostages.
Okay, but this was not the general tone of the protest. The general tone of the protest. You might have exceptions, but I'm talking about the general tone of the protest, the general demands, the banners that we all saw is that stop the war, demanding Israel to stop the war.
Okay, let's jump into the last couple of questions so we
need to wrap up.
Many people would look at this and are looking at it and saying, why should Lebanon and Lebanese not see this as a one-way street where Lebanon's basically surrendering and Israel takes what it wants? Why wouldn't they see it in that way?
Because Lebanon does not want to surrender. No one in Lebanon wants to surrender, and no one wants Israel to do its own way. Like, we have our own also sovereignty. We should have our own sovereignty and concerns and conditions. That's why the negotiations have to happen, so we can present our concerns on the table, and they can present that, and then we reach a middle ground. We're not going to get everything. They're not going to get everything, but we can reach a middle ground on the main issues. No one wants Lebanon to surrender.
Okay, and just to wrap up then, please just articulate for us what would the concrete benefits be to Lebanon and Lebanese citizens from a peace agreement with Israel? What could they hope for? Like, yeah.
So there's a peace agreement and there's Abraham Accords, right? Yes. There are two levels of it. A peace agreement would mean that the end of war, the Shia community will be more reassured and peaceful, because this means that the war ended, we have peace. So this is one, the end of war. And two, it's the return of the investments. Basically, Lebanon is in a state of peace, the investments will return, Lebanon will not have to beg for money anymore, we can actually start making money. Abraham Accords is a completely different level. Abraham Accords is basically the Israelis will invest in Lebanon. The Lebanon and Israel will have business deals. It's like the Gulf, right? Now we're not talking about this. I don't mind getting there as well, because this would be a huge benefit for Lebanon. We don't want Dubai to be the hub for this. We want Lebanon to also be a hub for it. But we're not talking about this now. We're talking about, after these steps of, that we listed, that we want to go for peace. Peace, it doesn't mean that you need to love the Israelis or become best friends with the Israelis and partners with the Israelis. No one's asking for that. It's just a declaration of end of war. Basically, we sign a peace in order to say we are no longer going to be fighting each other, and that's a great guarantee for everyone in Lebanon. And again, the Lebanese need it more than the Israelis.
So where is it at right now? The paper that you've presented, what's happening with it?
It's going around to the higher places. We're getting a lot of feedback. And I think, the challenge today, and I think we're getting there, some of my co-authors are working on it, is basically after the Lebanese showed signs of, negotiations, the Israelis did not respond. So I think the goal now is to get the Israelis to respond and basically say, okay, let's do it. And then it will be a test for the Lebanese and the Israelis to see how serious they are about it. But we need to get the Israelis to realize the benefits of this, because, again, I tell you, this is more important than the Lebanese. This is more crucial for the Lebanese. The negotiations in general, Lebanon needs it more than the Israelis. So we just need to get to a point where both agree on it, and hopefully the Americans will be able to get the Israelis to respond positively, and then we'll see. And again, negotiations is not peace negotiations. Negotiations is talk.
Just starting the
to start the conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to get something, because Lebanon cannot continue with the current situation financially and security-wise.
Great, thank you very much, Hanin. It was a very interesting and passionate sort of conversation. But
yes, despite our different opinions, we both agree that we both have Lebanon as our priority.
100%.
Yes, we come for it from a different angle, but we just want Lebanon to be better. And that's the most important thing.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Bye. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Real Talk and experiencing firsthand the real stories told by real people. I hope you found value and meaning, and encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. Your ongoing financial support is vital to our ability to continue delivering these stories, so please remember to click on the donate button in the description, giving only what you can afford. I spent my whole life giving my time, money and skill to serve human rights and social justice causes, and I know it's not easy to keep giving selflessly. But this work is important because the mainstream media has failed to live up to their obligations. So we need to step up, speak up, or we're no better than them. I believe by tuning in to this podcast, you are someone who wants to know the facts and the truth, so you can independently decide what to believe and what not to. My job is to deliver that information. Yours is to place a value on it. Whatever you decide is humbly welcome. Thanks again, and see you on the next episode of Real Talk.